we had a great session where you were talking about debunking some of the classical theories that we very fond of in the UK, the 70-20-10s and the learning styles. Just give us a flavour of the sort of things that you want to put over in that.
Well, what I always try to do is check the sources. Where it comes from, we had learning styles. It's very interesting when you start digging into the learning styles theory that this is not only Kolb or the visual and the kinesthetics kind of stuff, but there are over 70 different learning styles theories. And if you then check how many of them have any solid evidence, then there's no solid evidence at all. Actually, I was very surprised myself because I was started in teacher training myself. I learned learning styles. I was in a teacher training teaching my students learning styles, and then suddenly you find out that there is no science behind it. Well, that was a big shock, and from that day on, I'm trying to check every single theory, and sometimes it's correct, and sometimes it's nuanced. And if you talk about 10, 20, 70 percentages, you will never hear me say that informal learning is not important. No. But the amounts of formal and informal learning, that depends on the situation. And if you look at, well, actually when I received a question, can you check the story? And I received not from one person, I received from a couple of persons who knew I was busy trying to debunk myths together with Paul and with Casper. And so I tried to track the sources. And then it became very difficult because I couldn't find. Every single time I read, some people say, yeah, but where is this? And even in the most important source that everybody mentioned, that's the basic idea. Also there, some people say, okay. At that time, I thought I was too stupid to find the sources. So I put out a request to people, can you give me the evidence? Because I can't find it. And I received very interesting replies. Why do you think it's important? What is science? No, that's not my question. And why do you think those percentages are important? Well, you've named it after those percentages, so I thought there was some importance to it. And the more interesting replies was I did find two studies who come very close to the basic idea with totally different percentages. That's one thing. But also, I know a couple of researchers actually doing research on the team, trying to establish if it's correct or not. And they found out how difficult it is to prove this. Because, for instance, the definitions of formal and informal learning, that's a very big thing.
Right.
And also, if you look at the research being done, often it's based on recollections of how did you learn, but most of the time the people don't know how they learn and when they learn.
Sure.
So it's very difficult. So it's more a theory or a philosophy, but I can't say it's backed.
So some of those sources you were looking at, certainly for the recall pyramid, they were going back as far as 1912, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that 1912, our book was originally written in Dutch, and then we were asked to make a translation from English, and we did a major update. The English version has 20,000 words more than, and in the Dutch version we say it's wrong. But our English publisher said, yeah, but you know, copyright, you have to find the original version. So it took a long time, and suddenly we had great news. We found a version from the Second World War, and a source who said they found it. We were glad, and it was 2 weeks before we went to print. And then we got a tip from some other researchers. We found an even older source, 1912. And the funny thing is, all the sources were just totally made up.
It was quite surprising. One of the things you did also talk about today, which I noticed was caused a lot of interest, was about being able to retain different amounts of information. So whether it was written, whether it was visual, whether it was sound.
The dual channel theory.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that, because that's not all that well known, I think.
No, that's for me the most sad thing is I'm often discussing about myths, and some of the great, sometimes very simple stuff that actually we know works and that there is a lot of evidence backing it up, like the dual channel theory, is lesser known. Mm-hmm. So if you make a video adding a lot of text to a voiceover in the same language, very important element, same language, can make the retention drop. So it's a very easy thing, dual channel theory. If you look it up, you understand it in 10 minutes, but it has a big effect. One thing that I didn't ask in the audience because my time was limited, but there is a book about the science behind e-learning. I mentioned in my talk John Hattie, Visible Learning. That's about all the research done on learning in general. But there is a book by Clark and Mayer, The Science Behind E-Learning. And it's a great overview about what works, what doesn't work, and what we don't know yet. And for instance, I mentioned the redundancy principle. That's a very precise didactical principle for designing e-learning. But I've noticed for many people this was a big surprise.
Mm-hmm. So Pedro, we can read more about this in your book. What's the title of your book again?
Urban Myths About Learning and Education.